Oh, we lost Adam for a second, but all right, he's back.
Whoa.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to our virtual presentation of David Yoon's newest novel, Super Fake Love Song. Joining David tonight is Adam Silvera, and this event will include an audience Q&A. To submit a question, just use the Ask a Question button directly below the viewer's screen. You can also vote for any questions you find interesting and you'd like for our authors to answer. And our next event is scheduled for tomorrow, November 18th, with Mary Lee Carroll and Leon Dolan. And if you would like to consider supporting our bookstore tonight, just click on the green purchase button directly below the viewer screen. It'll take you to our website where you can purchase Super Fake Love Song. And I'm going to briefly introduce our guests for tonight, and then I'll let them take it away. So David Yoon is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Frankly in Love, which was a William C. Morris Award finalist and an Asian Pacific American Award for Young Adult Literature Honor. He was also the illustrator for his wife Nicola Yoon's best-selling novel, Everything, Everything. And joining him tonight is Adam Silvera, the New York Times best-selling author of Infinity Sun, They Both Die at the End, More Happy Than Not, and more. So I'm going to turn off my camera and let our guests take it away. Enjoy the talk, everyone.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Woo!
Yay! How are you?
What's up? I'm fine. I wish I could see you in person and everyone in the chat in person. Jen, Pino, Craig, everyone's here. That's great. Awesome.
I know. I'm really happy that last year you got to have the traditional launch for Frankly in Love before these times started happening.
Before these new traditions were formed.
Yeah, it's not great. But, you know, we're here and we're still able to celebrate books, and we're so grateful to Vroman for hosting us and putting up with our shenanigans for the evening. Thank you so much. And
yay!
Yeah, congratulations. Book 2 is here.
Book 2!
And it's gorgeous. But by the way, it's like, all right, we need to like take a second to appreciate like how gorgeous, like your writing and all your stories are gorgeous, but like your books get gorgeous too. Like it's like the beautiful end papers or the stained edges, or now this like gorgeous map.
Oh yeah, the map. That was like I scored so big on that one because I was like Jen. Well, I was like Jen Klosky, my editor at Putnam. I was like, "Are you down for more end papers?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure." I'm like, "Because I happen to have this thing that I totally designed out for you." And she was like, "Oh, sweet." So I just made it really easy, I think.
Yeah. Well done. I'm gonna start like commissioning you to like design pretty stuff for my books, because
do a fantasy, I'll make your map.
Dude, I did a fantasy, but the problem is I did a fantasy in New York, and no one cares about like a New York when they already like know what New York looks like.
We'll just give everything weird names, you know.
But yeah, let's talk about Super Fake Love Song. For those who don't know, what is the book about?
Okay, so the book is about, they're right on the cover. There's Sonny. He's like a huge nerd. And he's like sad nerd. Not like Frank in Frankly in Love. Frank in Frankly in Love was like confident nerd. He was popular. He had friends. This is the opposite. Sonny's like super insecure. Sweats a lot. Doesn't know what to say to girls. And generally is bullied by the star player of the football team. He meets Cirrus, who is super cool, traveled the world, lived everywhere. And he's so starstruck that when she mistakes Sonny's older brother's room for his, and it's filled with guitars and amps and rock star paraphernalia, he doesn't correct her. And then that's a problem, right? Because now because she believes him, and so now he has to follow through with this persona. And to complicate matters, like the persona that he's assuming, which is his older brother, they haven't really spoken in like a year. They're estranged. So there's that layer on top of it, but it's definitely a rom-com, right? Heavy on the com, because like this year was not so good.
Nope.
We've had better years.
We have. Thankfully.
So like we could use a laugh. I figure we could use a laugh. So I was like super hell bent on making this funny and light and just fun.
Yeah. Well, I've got to ask, were you more of a Frank or were you more of a Sunny?
I was more of a Frank. Yeah, Sonny is
You sure you're
like
not just like claiming to be cool
okay.
when you super weren't cool?
Let's say I'm Sonny on a bad day,
Okay.
because he's also really cynical and he's kind of a curmudgeon. I call him 15 going on 50. Um, and Cirrus is kind of the same way. So when they get together, they eventually become friends and whatever. Um,
Yeah.
they kind of sit around and make fun of the world together, and that was a lot of fun to write.
Well, what sort of drew you to like the rock star element of it all?
Um, because I like rock and roll and I miss it,
Yeah.
and there is no rock and roll anymore. It's all gone. It's just gone. And although I have a music producer friend, and he's like, "Don't worry, everything's in cycles. It's gonna come back. Don't you worry."
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
have you seen the pictures of like what some of these social distant concerts were looking like?
what, like the Chainsmokers in the Hamptons?
Oh, I have no idea. I haven't seen that. And the stuff where it's like people are like positioned like 6 feet away from each other in their own little like private like sort of like
Like,
booths and everything. Where I'm
yeah,
like, I'm not like a concert guy, but I could become a concert guy if I'm guaranteed like a seat. I don't have sweaty people like
we
spilling
should go
stuff
to
on me.
we should go to the Hollywood Bowl because that's basically what the
Yeah,
Hollywood Bowl is.
I haven't done that. And
Yeah, it's
wait,
cool.
am I a liar? Maybe I'm a liar, but I don't think I've
Hmm.
done Hollywood Bowl, which is something I feel like I've always you have to
Uh,
do if you're in LA.
oh yeah, yeah. If you want to be a real Angelino New York transplant, you got to do that. But yeah, I mean, like I was in bands in high school. I was in like a pretty bad metal band in high school, and
What was it?
I like rock and roll. We played Metallica, we played Ingve, we played Steve Vai, all the greats. Um, and it's like rock and roll. If you hear a song and you like it, you can pick up an instrument and you can play it yourself. Like you can figure out how to play it and get that rock star vibe going. If you listen to like a lot of trap or EDM or whatever, it's like you need a lot of equipment, like
Mm-hmm.
computers and mixers, and it's really expensive. Um, and so like I don't know, I like the DIY aspect of rock and roll. And so Sonny is very much a DIY kind of guy. He's not a LARPer. He's not that bad, but he makes props for LARPers. And so he's
Right.
always making stuff in his little laboratory. So I thought it suited him better to be like a DIY kind of rock and roller dude.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously has such a creative mind as well. You feel that sort of like punctuated in like all his sentences. He has so many like nerdisms just like going bouncing around his wonderful head. Um, but something I've always thought about with like writing music and everything. I've thought about this when I read like Gail Forman's like If I Stay and everything, which like features like a rocker as well. Like, how do you sort of navigate writing music and atmospheric like musical things that way without sort of the senses of being able to like take in the music? Like, do you find challenges there?
Oh, hold on. First of all, Nikki's saying, explain LARPer, you nerd.
Oh my god.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, everyone knows what LARPing is. Penn knows what LARPing is, and she's 8. Um,
Well, you're
uh,
her dad, so
That's true. Fair point. LARPing stands for live action role playing. It's when you dress up as knights and wizards and you go into the woods and you pretend to shoot magic missiles. Magic missile. Magic missile. You're you're married to a nerd. There's no use in calling me nerd when you're married to me. Anyway, what was the question? You were
just
saying,
about like how do you go about like writing
oh, writing
music in
music.
a book where people can't like hear the music and take it in, you
Oh
know?
right, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of tough because it's words. It's like dancing about architecture. Um, but lots of like pop culture references are important,
Yeah.
and talking about the structure of music. I'm a big structure person in general, and I love how pop songs are kind of all the same in a way. There's like a very set structure to them, and yet within this set structure we get all this meaning and stuff out of it, and variety. And
Yeah.
so I talk a lot about that, and I talk a lot about sort of um, what each instrument is, the purpose of each instrument is. So they become characters in themselves,
Right.
and together it becomes its own beast, and it allows the characters to sort of transform through their instruments. Um, but in the end, like it's really really hard. It's kind of like how in Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist at the end of the movie, that they're waiting to go to that amazing concert to see the band
Yeah.
of their dreams, and they don't actually play the song
Oh, I didn't
because
realize that.
yeah,
Oh, I
yeah,
don't remember. Yeah.
they don't play, because what if they played it and it was terrible? then you'd be like, it would undermine the whole thing. So it's better to
Right.
leave it like as a theoretical thing, as you know, because you know I could have written a song and put it in there, and someone would have played it and been like, "This is a terrible song. Now I hate this
Right.
book."
Yeah, you're like this. The book is like built around this song. Okay. Well, that's great. Well, okay. So this was your second YA novel. We talk a lot in this industry about like how book two is the worst. Like it's the first time you're writing a book while you're
Yeah.
contracted, and like all these different things. You now have like an audience, people who are familiar with your writing. Like, did you find anything that was like particularly more challenging the second time around, and anything that was easier?
Um, I I mean, I kind of poured my guts out for Frankly because I was going through a lot, you know.
Yeah.
My dad was real sick, Nikki's mom was real sick. We were both going through a bunch of stuff that made us remember a lot of poignant stuff about our childhood and
Hmm.
our relationship with our parents. Um, got that out of my system. And so I was kind of ready to just goof around and have fun. I actually had a ton of fun writing this book.
Okay.
The hardest thing was just finding what the conceit was. Um, but once I started writing, it was just kind of riffing. Um, just riffing on silly situations and cringy situations and playing on Sunny's insecurities. And I just had a ton of fun. I was like, this is kind of like not cool to say to another writer, but it was really fun to write.
No, I mean I love that for you, and I'm sure it gives hope to a lot of other writers who are like, wait a minute, can this one day be fun again? Because I have not been having fun writing lately, especially in 2020. I'm like, why did I choose this?
Wait, but I mean, like, you know, when you're like, you think of something outrageous to say and you're like, should I say it? Should I say it?
Right.
I shouldn't say it. And then you just say it. And then the room just kind of explodes. It was like that. I was like, should
Okay.
I write this? Should I write this? That's probably too weird. I'm going to write it. Hell with it. And it worked.
Yeah, it just like letting your weird flag like just like fly with it,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's yourself. Was there like, did you find that you were like self-conscious at all with having like a fan base and readers who maybe like, were you considered of like, oh, does this feel enough like Frank and Love? Am I going to please those readers, or are you
Hmm.
just constantly trying to put out what you put out?
I mean, definitely for sure. It's sort the when you're trying to follow up something and the advice is like, we want more of the same but different.
Hmm.
Um, it's really tough, you know, because you don't want to do exactly the same thing because people will be like, ah, it's the same. And then if you do something wildly different, then they'll be like, what is this guy all about? Um,
Yeah.
so it was definitely a balancing act. I picked and chose different elements from Frankly that I wanted to sort of riff on in the next book. But I definitely did not want to talk about, like, I was sort of done talking about the immigrant experience, talk about race,
Yeah.
stuff like that. I was like, I want this to be like a light, like a safe space for people to just goof around and have fun. Um, but there's a lot of noise when you're writing your second book. You know all about this. You've written like 16 books.
I've written
You've
6.
you've written like 32 books. They just
Plus,
increased.
I wish I am like I'm done.
You're prolific, dude.
No, it's like it, but it is really difficult, and there's a lot of noise, and you are constantly trying to like, you want to be honest to your storytelling, but also you're like, well, I know this has worked for people, sort of things. And, you know, like, I feel like we're often kind of encouraged to like keep our eyes on our own paper, but sometimes you're looking back at your own past
Hmm.
papers
Hmm.
and wondering if you can like pull it off again. And like, I'm like, this made people happy, so should I just do it again? And it's like, it doesn't always feel like it's being true to the story. So I'm
Yeah.
happy that you just sort of like
I
didn't
mean,
try to force.
you could though, right? You could tell the exact same story,
You
and
can.
probably lots of people would like it. But would you be happy as a writer? Me
Right.
personally, I gotta mix it up. Um, and so it was sort of like, what can I do to make it similar but keep it mixed up so I'm happy? Um, and so the way I did it was like, give yourself a few super early mornings. Get up at 4.
Oh,
Yeah,
you,
no, it's
you and Nikki sleep
I
in.
know. But seriously, when you're up at 4, there's no internal editor. You're not
Right.
thinking about Twitter. You're not thinking about, you know, your sales track or anything. You're just sort of back in that space that you were when you first started writing. And I'm always trying to get back to that space when
Yeah.
I wasn't self-conscious about anything. And then just kind of riff and let it flow that way. Later, is when I do the cleanup work, because there were like gags that I pulled in Frankly that I straight up repeated in Super Fake, and I was
Oh my
like,
god.
I'm a broken record. I need to zap all these. Um, so there's that problem. But really, if you like get yourself back into like that childlike state where you're not thinking about anything, you're just doing it because you love it,
Yeah.
then then that's kind of like what I do.
God. And what you just described there too. So I remember like being 11 and having while writing like and getting into writing seriously and having like the mildest like intentions narratively or whatever and just like typing and just like
Yeah.
coming from school and typing and just how free that felt and how it's been so hard to sort of like gain that back after you sell your first book, you know, because now you have like wonderful editors, Jen Klonsky, like
Okay.
emailing and like all these different things that come that sort of can like disrupt the flow of writing.
Hmm.
But books somehow still find their way out, and
Yeah.
you push through. So,
That's yeah.
cheers to you, my friend.
That's why we do what we do, but it's not easy. I wish it
Yeah,
were easier. Nikki comes out of her office sometimes and she's like, "Why do we choose this career?"
yeah.
And I'm like, "I don't know." Because when it works, it's fun.
Yeah, I think about it a lot too. While we're still sort of on the subject of like the connections, there was a question for you. Both Frankly in Love and Super Fake Love Song feature a protagonist who misrepresents the truth to pursue their love story. Why does the fake it till you make it appeal to you as a writer? Seems like a great question,
That's a good question. Yeah.
thematically.
Nikki says we are dumb.
Correct.
Yeah. um, I mean, especially. I mean, this is not particular to like immigrant kids, but immigrant kids definitely go through this more, where you're constantly code switching,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what. I mean, as an immigrant kid, you're desperate to fit in to like white mainstream America. I was not Korean enough to be Korean. I didn't fit in with mainstream white America, so I would always code switch. I was literally speaking almost completely different languages at home as I was at school, and then within school, you know, you talk to your teacher, you talk a certain way, you talk to your friends, you talk a certain way, you talk to your crush, and you just throw up all over yourself. Later, you talk to your kid and your spouse, and you're always talking differently to whoever you're talking to, and so all of us code switch to some degree. Um,
Yeah.
and it kind of begs the question: if we're always switching the way we present ourselves, what is the core self? Um, like, is it when you're alone at home talking to yourself?
Right.
Is that your true self? Um, but so yeah, I think everyone in their own way is kind of faking it till they make it, especially in America, when um, there's that old cliche. It's like you just call yourself the thing you want to become,
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
and then you eventually become that thing. And I did that when I wanted to be a designer. I called myself a designer, and then I wanted to be a writer, so I started calling myself a writer, and then it happened. But there's a fundamental, like, you just have to lie to yourself, and then eventually it becomes true, and then you're not lying anymore. But
Got
it's
it.
yeah, it's a weird thing. Um, so I'm fascinated by that. I think the true self is elusive,
Yeah.
and so that's why everyone in this book, the parents, the bully, everyone is faking it till they make it to some degree.
I love that so much. By the way, this cliche I'd never heard of. So thank you for
Ah.
introducing it to me. But no, it's so funny. It has me thinking too about the way that I sometimes don't like blending my friend groups because I'm like, I'm a different person with like all my
Right?
like friends and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, like who would I be like at this party? Like everyone's got to be looking at you thinking like, Adam's acting off. He's acting very weird right now.
Yeah.
It's like even around like I think about how when I'm around you guys, I try not to curse as much because of your daughter. You know, when that is like so natural for me. Like I've been cursing and swearing so much since I was a child
Yeah.
in the South Bronx.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm like reserved out of respect for your daughter.
It starts so early because I like when I visit Penn at school and I just kind of peer around a pillar just to watch her. I can see her being a different person among her classmates,
Yeah.
and she's been doing that since she was like 5, and so it starts early, and it really makes you wonder like. The idea of the self is so flexible. The idea of your individual identity is so flexible. Um, Penny knows Uncle Adam swears. She's heard you.
She has.
You know?
But okay, so then also I love that you have this ability to sort of like switch through thematically and everything. I love asking this for writers. Is there a genre that you feel particularly interested in writing one day, and then a genre that you don't ever think you're ever going to touch?
Genre.
Yeah.
You see that supercut of Alex Trebek saying genre?
Oh, I haven't. And
Yeah,
rest in
I
peace,
know.
man.
Rest in
Yeah.
peace, man. I really want to write a horror novel. I'm a
Oh my God.
huge horror movie fan. Like I can anyway. Um, I think it's a misunderstood art form. Nikki hates it, so I watch it alone. So I'm totally down to write one. Um, and a genre that I would not write would be historical. Anything historical, because
Yeah.
it's like a lot of research, and I'm just like after a while I'm like, who cares?
Right.
Although when I see a good historical, when I read a good historical, I'm so impressed and like just overwhelmed by the detail. It's beautiful. But me putting it together, I don't know. Yes, I'm too
Yeah. I'm just
lazy.
like, I need like, I need my characters to have cell phones, you know? Like, like
Wait,
that is
so
like,
you couldn't
but
set yours in like the 60s or something?
you know, it's just like, and like my books all have like social media, like in big ways,
Yeah.
which I didn't realize until sort of like recently. I was like, oh yeah, like I'm definitely like a writer who writes about social media for sure, and I can't imagine like, I'm like, how do people reach each other?
We
Like,
didn't. And we stood each other up all the time.
yeah, how do we know like what the other person's doing with their day
We didn't.
if I can't
Yeah.
scroll through,
It was just
you know?
question marks everywhere, fill in the blank. I mean, I set all my stories in Southern California, I think mostly because I'm lazy and I don't want to do the research. Like, I grew up here, so I know every inch of this place, and it makes it very easy.
Well, heads up, once you start reaching book 5 or 6, like I have, people will start calling you out on that. Like, why do you only write about New York? Because I'm like, because that's all I know. And like, you guys are constantly yelling at me to only write what I know. So like, you don't want me to write about Ohio. I promise you. Like, I do not know what it's like to live there.
Just two characters standing in a cornfield,
Right.
you know? And Ohioans are like, ah, God, this again.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I'm not trying to do you guys dirty like that. Like, I think now that I'm coming up on 2 years of LA, I might be able to start like, you know, touching some LA stories. I think the person still has to be new. I can't write about like native LA people. But
Is this what they call autofiction when it's like barely disguised autobiography?
yeah, is
Yeah.
that, first of all, I never heard that term, but I love it. Oh, see, you're getting called
Hey,
out. Corn
we're
is
not-
Iowa. Corn is Iowa.
That's what I said. I said Iowa.
Oh, I heard Ohio, and I'm
Say the thing
moderator,
you want it
so...
to be.
I love it. Okay, I want to talk about the really fun development that you and lovely wife, Nicola Yoon, announced a few weeks ago. Joy Revolution.
Wait.
Would you like to walk us through what Joy Revolution is?
So this all started when, kind of around when we first met. Like, we've been talking about this idea for a long time, where is like we never saw each other in rom-coms. The only time I saw myself depicted in media was either the dude is like a triad or he's like a martial artist or something, or just kind of like a visual joke. Really felt great.
Right.
The only time Nikki saw herself in anything really was like the sassy black bus driver or whatever, the sidekick who tells the straight truth to the white hero. And we're like, why aren't there POC characters who are romantic heroes? Just in general, you never see them. And so that was our pitch basically to Barbara Marcus at Random House. We're like, we want to start an imprint where POC are they're in the starring role of the rom com. And she's like, yeah, okay. We're like, sweet. And she made it happen. So
sure.
like we owe everything to her, and the team at Random House are amazing. And we're gonna start. We're on the hunt for an editor, and we're gonna feature books, ideally by POC, about POC, starring POC in rom-coms, for a YA audience. And the first books, hopefully, will come out in 2022, which we're super psyched for. Yeah.
This is, I mean, I'm so happy all the different hats you're wearing, from illustrator, author, publisher. Like, it's, I mean, but I mean, you must seriously like be so proud of what this contribution is going to be for our industry, and knowing the representation you'll be able to help cast for so many teenagers that would have been such great service to you
Oh
and
my God.
Nikki as kids, and to so many other kids outside of your identities and such. And I'm so hyped for this imprint.
Yeah, it's gonna be so much fun, and emphasis on the fun. Like the logo, we're gonna announce the logo at some point, but it's like a little shelter. It's a heart and a shelter, and that's literally the idea. It's like a safe space for people to just for POC to be themselves and explore the full breadth of their humanity without having to serve as like some kind of lesson about racial harmony.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's like feels like mandatory reading in high school.
Yeah,
and such
totally.
like that. Yeah,
we call them vegetables. We don't want vegetable books.
Right.
And you're facing the same issue too. Like when you have like queer characters who are, it's about like what can straight people learn from queer people. There's a purpose for that book, but the other side needs to be told too, where the 100%. Queer characters just themselves, and just being awesome.
Well, speaking of love, before we start taking some questions, I'm stupid, and I only realized this like earlier this week. I'm like, both your YA titles have the word love in the title. And I know Nikki is like a big lover of love. It's all she talks about. We got some more love there. So I want to play a little game where I shout out some YA titles and you give them the good old David Yoon love spin. We can move through them quickly if you want to stop and like, I don't know, explain yourself.
I'm ready.
All right.
You're so dumb.
Pause.
There's no pause.
Okay, no pause. All right. Long Way Down.
Love Way Down. Wait,
How It All Blew Up by Arvin Amati.
Wait, say it again.
How It All Blew Up by Arvin Amati.
How My Heart Blew Up?
How It All Blew Up.
No, I'm saying How My Heart Blew Up.
Oh, love it. Oh, you're giving love it. Okay.
That's gross.
Fantastic. The Hate You Give. The Hate You Give.
Oh, The Hate You Give?
Yeah.
The Love You Give. That's easy.
Yeah. Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda.
Just Simon's in Love. Just
Love
Simon's
Simon
in
was
love.
the correct answer. You lost.
Oh, I blew it. Oh.
The sun is also a star.
I love my wife.
Everything.
Love is everything.
They both die at the end.
That's just they both die at the end. You can't change that.
Thank you. You can't improve upon perfection.
I mean, love in the afterlife, I guess.
Oh, I'm into it.
Ghost Love.
That's the sequel.
Yeah, it goes all paranormal.
Yeah. I was like, I'll write a ghost story. Infinity Sun.
Love Infinity. I don't know. Love Infinity? Something. Love Infinity? Yeah, love is infinite. Infinite love.
Oh, that's it. Boom. An Ember in the Ashes.
Oh my God. There is no love. This is Subba's book. Have you read Subba's books?
Yeah, that's why it's fun.
Brutal. There is no such thing as love. That's the title.
I know we have book 4 to like confirm that soon. Shatter Me.
Oh God. Love and Leave Me? I don't know.
I was thinking just simply Love Me. It felt very desperate and appropriate.
But there's like a and that book is not a walk in the park either.
No, love it.
No, it's very intense.
The last two. Warcross.
Warcross? Love and War.
Love and War.
Uh-huh.
And lastly, your adult debut, version 0.
Oh God. I would just call it The Haters. Because that's an adult thriller and that's all about the internet. And I gotta tell you, you know what? Love and hate. That's what I'll call it because I love the internet and I hate the internet in literally equal amounts. And I have no idea what to do with it.
Well done, David. You survived.
Did I win? I win. Yay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really like, I have to tell Becky on her birthday that you got Love Simon wrong essentially, but I think she'll still love you nonetheless.
She's gonna kick my butt.
She probably is.
I'm dead. She's fierce.
She.
No, she's like the gentlest,
I was
kindest
supposed to say
person in the
anyone who
world.
says Becky is fierce has not met Becky. All right, let's take some questions, some preguntas, as mi gente say.
I'm gonna pretend to scroll too because I want to be like you.
All right. From Savannah, have either of you ever had a manuscript go through multiple drafts without an ending? Start there. Have you had that experience?
Without an ending?
Yeah.
No. No, that's I'm lying. Because a lot of times you can sell particularly a YA book on a partial, which is
Right.
just like usually the first act. So say it's like a 380 page book, it's around like 100 or so pages for the first act. And you just have a vague sense of where it's going, but you don't have a specific ending. I've had manuscripts uh, edited where we had to change the ending for sure.
Okay. Well, and I guess because I'll modify this question because this was sort of about like working through the manuscript without having the ending in place. But like, how do you go about revising a manuscript that isn't true to the ending that you originally imagined for it? Like, do you find that has like a lot of like, because you're a structural person too, like, do you find that changes so much of like Act 1 and Act 2, or?
Oh yeah, it changes everything. Especially like my sort of death march was version 0 that went through so many revisions, and the first draft was completely different than the final draft. But you just got to roll with it. I need to know how a book's going to end at all times.
Yeah.
And if the ending has to change, if it becomes apparent, you're like, oh boy, we got to change this. So be it,
Yeah.
And then you got to like go cry it out, go for a run, and then come back and be like, all right, let's do this. Now you got to go back throughout the entire beginning of the book and make sure that all those threads line up and make sense. It is as tedious as you think it is.
Right. It can be rough. I remember for They Both Die at the End, the ending essentially changed, but like More Happy Than Not, which was my first book, that story originally was like kind of partially a ghost story.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was like a whole ghost in there. He was called the Spectre. It was like a whole thing. And then and it ended with like this Aaron kind of like telling the Spectre off, and the Spectre like walked away and vanished.
What?
Forever.
Really?
Yeah, it's like it was ridiculous. It was a horrible ending to begin with.
Wait, was it near future too?
Yeah, it was still like the same Lateo Institute stuff was there, but like it just essentially Aaron's everything that he'd forgotten about himself manifested into this like ghost that only he could see.
I kind of like that idea. No, why not?
No, I think it could have worked. I think at 22 when I wrote this book, I wasn't the experienced writer for it. And I also think what happens sometimes with writers too, which I think is important, especially first-time writers, is that you have this instinct to kind of like put all your good ideas in one book sometimes because you're scared you're not going to get another opportunity. So I was like mixing things, thinking like I've got to put all my best ideas into one, and that doesn't actually lead to like a proper meal. It just leads to like hot dogs and broccoli, like
just a trash plate, just like
yeah.
I mean, I would say marry a writer or date a writer because they will read your stuff, and like Nikki and I read our stuff all the time, first drafts, early work, and we're one of the themes is like we're always like save this for later. This is awesome. Save it for later. There was a whole like police buddy sub storyline in version 0 that really had no place, and so I cut the whole thing. So in the future, there's going to be like a buddy cop something happening.
Cool.
Because I'm not going to forget it. It's still there. It's still good. Doesn't go bad.
Yeah. Great question from Jen. Jen said that she feels like one away. That we've both been writing during 2020. Is this true? And if so, how have you managed to stay focused and creative? How do you help your mind settle and get into that mode with everything going on? I don't know what's been going on.
What's been going on?
Pretty still year.
Have you met people who are like, my life is not fundamentally different? I know like 2 people like that.
Yeah.
They're like, because they live out in the sticks and they can work from home, so they're like, I don't really notice any change. And I'm like, you just want to like reach through the phone and grab them. Be like, seriously?
Just completely drop kick them, yeah.
But I mean, like, I meditate every day. I try to work out every day, and just take really good care of yourself. Get a lot of sleep. Do do a hobby, play a stupid video game and finish it all the way through. Um,
Yeah.
Watch whatever you want, spend however much money you can afford on making your nest nice, because we're stuck in our houses, so might as well make it perfect.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, the biggest thing is like just be really, really gentle with yourself. Like you're not gonna accomplish as much as you normally would have. You're not gonna get all the things you wanted to get done. Your to-do list is going to get bigger and bigger because we have less time and we have less space, and so much of our brains are taken up by anxiety and fear, that you need to just be aware of it
Yeah.
and just sit with it. Just let it run its course. And I fought really hard against that at the beginning, like in like April and May. I was like, I'm gonna make stuff. I'm gonna
Yeah.
start all this stuff. I'm gonna start podcasting. And after a while, it's like, no, 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 no. This is not normal. It's not a normal response. The normal response is to hunker down and be very aware of the threats around you. So really forgive yourself.
Absolutely.
Cut yourself some slack.
I remember thinking at the beginning when we were lied to about like this should be like 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, or whatever. And I
Oh
remember
my
thinking,
God.
as like we were coming up on that mark, I was like, oh my God, I haven't finished my revision. Like I'm gonna kick myself for like not taking advantage of this time to like just like hunker down. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. And like I live alone. I am not homeschooling or anything, and like my lifestyle has changed very dramatically.
Oh yeah, totally.
From this, and it's like not been great. And like therapy has been big for me, and I really have been, for those who have access to therapy, I truly have been encouraging people.
Yeah.
And if not like meditation, I've been like journaling a little bit more too. And it really is like, I'm tired. I'm going to watch a movie. I'm going to rewatch Veep for the 20th time because
it's awesome.
Myself right now. Yeah. And it's like I'm not a robot, and I refuse to pretend to be. Like I pushed my book back by 2 months because I was late, because I'm like, I refuse to work every day. I know no publisher wants to hear that, but I'm like, I'm a human being, and I've come to realize that during this terrible time.
And just trust that like everyone else in the country is going through the same thing. Everyone else is behind, but if everyone is behind, then we're actually all in sync.
Right.
So there is no late anymore. There is no behind. And yeah, if you have access to a therapist, I mean, I had to call up my therapist because I was at like this weird breaking point, and she said, forgive yourself. It's not your fault. None of this is normal. We've never done this before. There is literally no good way of doing this.
God, you couldn't write this year and have any editor believe it. Like, and any reader being like, all right, like, bro, like, it's too much. I'm still waiting on like the murder hornets. I'm like, that's gonna come back. Like we keep not paying enough attention to that, and it's gonna come back.
Why did you say that?
I'm warning
They're listening.
You, bro.
They're on this call. They're like, all right.
I know they're like watching.
He said, bring it.
Right now. They're gonna order a signed book at least, I'm sure, through Romans. Speaking of books, Leah Wong wants to know, what books have you read this year that you really loved? Have you been able to read this year? It is perfectly acceptable if you have not.
Yeah, I have actually.
Okay, great.
I read Red, White, and Royal Blue, which was like mind blowing.
Yeah.
Mind blowing. Everyone needs to read this book. The wit is like virtuosic. I was like kicking myself. You get that writer envy. You're like, why is it so good?
When I saw that premise, I'm like, oh my God, how did I not think of that? Like,
it's so obvious. Yeah. And I read Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, which every American needs to read. That's sort of like, it's like the missing history book in our education that we should have been taught, but weren't, for reasons that become really obvious. It has to do with power. Pro tip, it's about power.
That is a perfect blurb right there. Like that really that was like, oh my God, the missing like history book that I've never read. Like, and
and once you read it, you're like, it totally makes sense. I just finished Leah Johnson's book, You Should See Me in a Crown. Oh, no, I didn't finish. I'm halfway through it, and it's really charming and fun and just totally sweet. And it makes fun of promposals, which are ripe for making fun of.
Right.
So I've been reading, not as much as Nikki. Nikki reads like 2 books a week. She's crazy.
Right. Well,
2 to 3 books a week.
She's
But
not doing
yeah,
anything else, you know. She's just chilling all the time. I mean, you're
yeah,
like doing all the homeschooling and parenting and cooking and cleaning, and she's just like lounging around and
just
doing her
eating
niggler units.
bonbons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have read and loved like Arvin Ahmadi's How It All Blew Up. It is my favorite
Oh,
Arvin
nice,
book.
nice. Yeah.
And Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas, which was
Oh, yeah.
like trans Latinx fantasy novel, and
All
I
right.
really was like so happy for everything with this book. Okay,
Joy Revolution. See?
100%.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Pregunta. From Craig Hale. What is the worst writing advice you've ever been given?
Um, it was, what is it? Oh, hurry up. This came from a writing teacher in college, and he was like, he's actually an established writer. I don't want to say his name, but he was like, I got published when I was 23, so hurry up, dude. And I was like, are you trying to be funny? Because now I feel terrible.
Right.
you know? And what he should have said is write your heart. It happens when it happens, and if it takes forever, there was a reason for it. There was a reason for it. The other worst piece of advice is all writing finds a place. Um, just don't believe that. Just keep working really hard.
Yeah.
And work your connections. Um, I had stuff that sat in a drawer for 10 years. It didn't find a place, and it still hasn't. But don't worry about that finding a place, and just keep producing new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when opportunity does come knocking, you have lots of stuff to choose from instead of hanging your hat on that one thing that you're just like, oh, I hope someone publishes this. Finish it, move on.
Yeah. I'm also not a fan of write every day.
Ooh.
Yeah, and like I used to think like I have to write 1,000 words every day, and I saw some author talk about that, and I was like, well, she's a bestseller, and it's like, no, like
Yeah, no.
that's not sustainable for me. And I'm like, and I think every writer has to sort of discover their own process,
Mm-hmm,
and like I find that my process changes per book.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
And
you were like cranking super hard on Infinity Sun, like that just like whoosh, just came out like a baby.
No, my God, I'm like traumatized, and like the sequel was like worse. Like I really was like I had like in my acknowledgments. Normally, it's like, here's why this was such a joy to write. It's like this was the worst thing that I've ever gone through, and I was depressed, and I was suicidal, and I needed therapy more than ever. And I'm just being honest because I'm like, this changes for us, and this is why writing advice can be so dangerous sometimes. It's like I always talk about how writing is trial and error as well. Like sometimes you can outline a book and arrive to the ending sooner. Sometimes you just wing it and get there faster as well. And you won't know. So, listen to writers, come to these panels, and sample what we are saying works for us, but don't see
Trust
it as a forward dictation by far. Like
totally trust your own process for sure. I mean, I can only write max 6 hours a day. And if nothing comes out, if my word count is like 10, then I stop. I have to stop and do the dishes or something mindless. Nikki writes by longhand because she's crazy.
Yeah.
I can say that because she went out to get dinner. And then she types it all in, and that's part of her editing process. But I also know like Tahara Mafi, she can just sit down. 6 weeks later, there's a book.
Yeah.
And
she's talked about doing like 5,000 words a day sometimes. I'm like, what?
She's crazy.
Yeah, and then to be such a fan of her books too, and like having read the majority of them, I'm like, and they're all great. So we all have different output.
Get off social media. Don't compare yourself to others.
That's a big one for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question. I've seen a couple other questions, but before I have to ask you, how is PlayStation going for you?
Awesome. I'm a little upset that Miles Morales is so short. Like, what the hell, Sony? Come on.
Yeah,
they got us with that one.
Did you beat it already?
No, but we're slow, and we're at like 70%.
Oh,
and I'm like, there better be some DLC down the line. Come on.
Yeah, I think they're supposed to be, but still.
Yeah.
I miss like. Do you remember when they used to do video games based on movies? Like like those days are just done. Like they just, I guess like they were not like they were like so many Lord of the Rings games and such, and Men in
The
Black games, and I
the
guess there's just
Chronicles
like
of Riddick. You ever play that game?
no.
It was surprisingly good, even though the movie was totally stupid.
Right. And did you play like the Matrix games?
Yeah, I did. They're
Yeah.
pretty good.
See,
They're not bad.
yeah. I mean, they were fun. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. I just missed that. And I wish that like those were more successful, so we can get like book game adaptations.
Oh my god, that would be amazing. It's
Yeah.
like you are Sunny Day, and you're trying to get.
And then it's like Guitar Hero. You know?
I'm like all about the Nintendo Switch still. I'm
Yeah.
waiting for the good games to rolling out. I'm waiting for Ratchet and Clank to come rolling
Okay.
through.
Oh, you used
Yeah,
to play it so much as a kid. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. There's a question from. These are two music related questions. Start with January's. Was there any music you listened to while writing the book that helped inspire you?
Rock and roll.
Okay.
I started in like the prog rock 70s because I'm a huge nerd. So like Rush and King Missile. And then I moved into the 80s with big hair bands like Extreme and Rat. And on through the 90s. And you remember bands like Korn and Disturbed?
Yes.
I was listening to Down with the Sickness and I'm like, this is a pretty
Oh my
cool
God.
song.
I was obsessed with Down with the Sickness. Like I can remember like head bashing like Adam right now. Yeah.
You know, doing that. And then I went into
play a lot of those for like wrestling theme songs as well. Like they used some for like the pay-per-view events. Like they would get like a Disturbed song or like Linkin Park or something, and that would just be like the theme song, and it'd be like clicked on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Linkin Park. I mean, I was just going through because I was really missing rock and roll, and so I was going through all my favorite rock bands, and I noticed they all kind of stopped like about 20 years ago, like like Weezer and Jimmy Eat World and like you know all those bands. They kind of stopped like that.
Yeah.
There are no new rock bands coming out, and the Strokes and like all those guys, and I was like, why is that? Why is that? I wonder. Something's going on. But I hear there's like new rock bands forming. I'm just, you know, too lazy to find out who they are. So,
well, they'll if they're right for you, they will find you. The other music question was, if you could have a theme song, what would it be?
oh, I know what this is. It's oh God, it's that song Jake Bug. Do you know Jake Bug? He's like this kid. He's like a teenager, and he sounds like a classic old country folk song guy. And he's got the song Two Fingers. He's British, so that means middle finger for us. And he sings about holding two fingers up to yesterday.
Okay, I need to like go. You need to text me this one later.
It's a great song, yeah. So that was my When I stopped working my day job, I was like, I played that song.
Wait, was that? Yeah, I knew you when you stopped working the day job.
Yeah.
Because I've known you for about 6 years now.
Oh my God. That's right.
We met officially at Midwinter 2015. It was
that picture is so funny. Yeah.
Yeah, God. Oh my God. Yeah, so we've known each other for almost 5 years. Well done, us.
Time flies.
We're neighbors.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah, it really is. I'm like, we should have just. So Dave lives down the block from me. Like I feel like we should have just grabbed like some lawn chairs and just like, set up an iPad and just like had a little like, what's the between two ferns? Like we should have just done that. Like, just like, oh God. Well, another craft question I want to make sure we get to.
Okay.
For both of us from Triven. Hi. For both of you, did you have to convince yourself to finish writing your first book? If so, how did you do that and get past the feeling that nothing would ever come from it? Which is such a great question because you're not contracted. You're just writing this thing, like wondering, like, will it turn into something?
It's not easy. I mean, and that's why I always tell people if you can afford it, go to an MFA program. They're expensive, I know, and the degree really is irrelevant. What matters is meeting a group of people who are super passionate about it and super serious. Because I tried forming my own sort of impromptu writing groups, and you get all kinds of weirdos and flakes, and so you really need to be somewhere where people are serious enough to finish stuff and take it very seriously. But you can meet up with people on. There's so many ways to do this now. You can do it through NaNoWriMo, which is happening right now. And if you hang out with writers, then it's pretty easy to find out like who's serious enough to want to form like a beta circle. But like, how did you do it? Because I went to Emerson College. What
Yeah.
did you do?
I mean, so like I didn't go to college at all, and you know, like for me, I stayed involved in the industry because I mean I was like passionate about it. And I think here's the thing, like you've gotta give a shit about it, or oh, there we go, first but no, you have to, because like here's the thing, you can tell when someone's writing a book because they think it's like a cash grab or whatever, whereas like there's so many of us who are like, no, I like am bursting with story, you know, and I have this, maybe not 10 stories, maybe just one book. Some people are so satisfied with just like writing one book, you know, which is like a gigantic accomplishment, you know, like I don't think that anyone is better for being able to produce more than one book or whatever, but like it's, for me, like I've been writing since I was 11. It's all I really wanted to be doing. I was arrogant about it. I was writing as if I already had the book deal, you know, like I had no doubts. But here's the thing, like be your biggest like hype man, hype woman, hype person, like like actually like celebrate yourself and cheer yourself on, and you know, cross the bridge of whether or not that book moves forward when you get to it. Like I really was just operating as if like it's gonna get published, like maybe it won't be this version of the book or something, but like I'm going to be published at some point. And I didn't doubt myself, but really it's like you've got to be excited about it. And books are tricky. Like everything I've published, I have loved writing at one point, and I've absolutely hated writing at one point. Like, and I'm always like proud of it, but that doesn't mean that I loved it the entire way through. Like, it is, at the end of the day, I remind people that like it is still a job.
Yeah,
you know, I've never had a job where I loved being there 8 hours a day.
It's a relationship with like this other part of yourself that is gonna detached from your head at some point. But I mean, that's why Margaret Atwood said, you know, my favorite advice of hers was read, and write, because it's really important that we used to ask the dumbest question at Emerson College. We'd be like, is this publishable? Is this publishable? And it was a dumb question because we shouldn't have been worried about what was publishable. We were basing it on what was already out there. And if we were going to write something that was like something that was already out there, then there'd be no reason to publish it because it's already out there. So the most important thing is to like get freaky with it and just like be yourself. Let your freak flag fly as hard as you can, because that's what people want. They want you. They don't want you pretending to be someone else.
Yeah.
But in order to know who you are and what your particular style is and personality, you need to read, consume everything you can, even stuff you might not like, especially stuff you might not like, and then write, meaning practice your craft. That's how you discover what you yourself are like, because you don't really know. The first draft of any story is simply you telling the story to yourself. And so how do you tell that story? What's important to you? You don't know that until you practice. Yeah. So that's what I would say. And remember, they want you. They don't want you being like Stephen King or something.
Yeah, and it's so true, right? Because I think about this all the time. Where like, if we can give writers, if you ask, I give this example a lot. If you ask me to write the Hunger Games, that's already going to be different, because that's going to be Adam Silvera writing the Hunger Games, which means like it is not going to be about Katniss and Peeta being like the romance, right? It's going to be about like Peeta and Gale back home or something, right? Like, I'm going to make it gay, and also I'm probably going to kill everybody. Like there's going to be no victor at the end, you know? But like
they all die at the end.
Yeah, they all die at the end. Like there is no winner of the 74th Hunger Games. But let that serve as a reminder to all the 12 districts. But it is this thing where it's like we can all be given the same idea. So even sometimes when you see book announcements that are like, oh my God, that sounds so much like the book I'm going to write. You're reading 2 sentences, if even, about what that book is about. You are not reading the 300, 500 page book, whatever it is, right? Like it is going to be so different. And immediately your perspective, your voice will always make it more distinct and everything.
Absolutely.
There's so many books where we can be like, oh, this sounds like that, you know? And it's like, no, well, and maybe it sounds like it. Maybe you can say if you enjoy this, you might like this or whatever, but you might not.
It's totally true. Totally true. Like when Kazuo Ishiguro came out with The Buried Giant, I was like, Ishiguro's doing King Arthur? It's not the what, it's the who and the how. And that's where the author comes in. Totally.
Well, sadly, we're out of time. Well, thank you, David, and thank you, Adam. That was such a wonderful conversation. Time really flies. And thank you to everyone in the chat and for submitting such great questions.
Sorry we didn't get to them all. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, time is limited. So, but if you would like to purchase a copy of Super Fake Love Song, just click on the green purchase button directly below. It's a gorgeous book, as you can see. And for those who came in late, don't worry. The replay of this talk will be available within an hour just using the same stream link. And
don't put us in front of a camera.
And that about wraps things up. Thank you again, and stay safe, everyone, and take care of yourself.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Bye, Adam. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.